The release of ancient viruses from thawing ice, secret military operations dating back to World War II, and technology being used to contact extraterrestrials? There may be much more going on in Antarctica than you think. Eric Hecker, a former Raytheon Technologies Corporation employee, made a controversial statement about his experiences in Antarctica. At a United States UFO disclosure meeting, Hecker claimed that he'd seen, quote, powerful machines in Antarctica that could potentially be used to, quote, contact alien crafts in deep space. He referred specifically to the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, a scientific facility in the South Pole, which he said wasn't just a listening device as it was advertised. According to Hecker, the device has the capacity to transmit signals and in fact may be part of a much larger and more secretive operation. He even went as far to say that the facility is, quote, the world's largest direct energy weapons system. So, could there be some crazy hidden technology and government projects going on in the icy tundra of the Antarctic? And if so, could some of it come from somewhere beyond Earth? UFOs in Antarctica. It just goes together surprisingly well, and back in February, UFO enthusiasts claimed to have discovered what looks like a crashed extraterrestrial on a 6-mile wide island called Tuhamuk. The object, which some internet users believe to be a UFO, looks sorta like it has a domed top, wide rim, sort of a metallic appearance maybe. It seems to measure around 12 meters in width. The image of the object first showed up on Reddit, and it got people talking. Some are convinced that the shape and smoothness of the object can't be, or is at least very unlikely to be, a natural formation. There's comments like, it's obviously a craft, look at how smooth the curvature is. Another commenter wrote, if being eroded by a wave, it would not keep a consistent shape like that, and certainly not poking out the opposite way, and even indenting in behind it, forming a perfect circle. The ones saying that it's ice are completely ignoring these facts. This is a wonderful find, end quote. Now, of course, others are dismissing it as just an interesting looking block of ice, but what do you all think? Operation Tabarin was a top-secret British mission during World War II, which ran from 1943 to 46. Its goal was to secure British control over parts of Antarctica that were contested by Argentina and Chile. To do this, the British set up permanent research stations and conducted scientific work, while also providing postal services and supporting weather observations, which were important for Allied shipping routes in the South Atlantic. The operation kicked off in 1943, right in the middle of the war, after the British government approved it. The team, led by Lieutenant Commander James Marr, set off from the UK in November that year, and by early 1944, they'd established 2 main bases. In 1944, Captain Andrew Taylor took over the operation after Marr had to step down due to illness. New bases were set up, and they also brought sled dogs to help with the work and extended their research on the Antarctic mainland. During the winter months of 1944 and 45, the teams at the base faced extreme conditions, with 14 men staying through the winter in 1941, in 1944, and 21 the following year. By March of 1946, the mission came to an end though, and the work was handed over to the Falkland Islands Dependencies Survey, or the FIDS. This laid the foundation though for what would later become the British Antarctic Survey, or BAS, which still carries out scientific research in Antarctica to this day. But some think there's more to the story than what's been officially released. Some think Operation Tabarin also had a lot to do with monitoring a secret base built by the Third Reich. Now, while it is 100% true that the Germans had disguised ships sailing the Pacific to disrupt Allied shipping, some straying into the colder waters of the South Pole, there have also been rumors for decades that they established a secret base on the mainland. This theory goes way back to the aftermath of World War II and is often tied to ideas about high-ranking German officials escaping to Antarctica after the war, including the leader himself. The story got more attention when people claimed that a German U-boat was spotted in the South Atlantic in July of 1945, just months after Germany's surrender. The rumor really started to pick up in 1947, when a Hungarian named Ladislas Sabo suggested that the Germans had built a hidden base in Antarctica, possibly as a refuge or secret base to continue carrying out their work. The Germans did 100% briefly visit Antarctica in 1939. Supposedly it was only for a short time as part of a surveying expedition, but could they have established something more permanent? It's possible. Now, Antarctica today might be a frozen wasteland, but it wasn't always that way. In the distant past, long before it was covered by thick ice, Antarctica was a lush, warm region that was actually full of rainforests. There have been fossils discovered in the area that show millions of years ago the continent was full of tropical trees, forests, and it was full of animal life. One of the most fascinating discoveries are the fossilized wood and leaf imprints. Fossils from marine creatures, birds, even dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period have been found. It's hard to imagine now, but at one time Antarctica was very biodiverse. Scientists have also found the preserved forewings of beetles that lived between 14 and 20 million years ago, and tiny single-celled fossils. And here's a really strange one. They've even found 50 million-year-old sperm cells on the egg case of an extinct species of worm. But you don't need to look to the distant past to find fascinating ecosystems in Antarctica. Turns out that beneath the ice sheets, there's an entire network of underground lakes. In 1970, scientists first detected the existence of these lakes using radar technology, and it turns out there are about 400 subglacial lakes scattered across the continent. The lakes are found under several kilometers of ice, and they've been kept liquid because of the intense pressure from the ice sheet above it. The weight of the ice actually prevents the water from freezing, despite, being in Antarctica. One of the most famous of these lakes is Lake Vostok, which was discovered by Russian scientists in the 90s. It is the largest subglacial lake in Antarctica and the third largest lake in the world by volume, sitting about 3.5 kilometers or over 2 miles under the ice. What makes Lake Vostok especially cool, though, is that it's been sealed off from the outside world for over 20 million years. But in recent years, scientists have drilled into the ice to get samples from the lake and other subglacial lakes in Antarctica, and they found some cool stuff. In 2014, for example, scientists studying Lake Whillans, nearly a kilometer beneath the ice, found this active ecosystem of microorganisms living in the lake. The tiny creatures have been totally isolated from sunlight and fresh air for millions of years. Is what you're looking at here a natural formation? Well, it's fun to imagine that it isn't, that at some point in the distant past, pyramids similar to the ones in Egypt were built by some long-lost civilization in Antarctica. And to be fair, there are some pretty incredible looking pyramid-like formations in Antarctica that look almost too perfect to be naturally forming, but the pyramid-like structure is officially part of a mountain range called the Ellsworth Mountains, the highest mountain range in Antarctica. They were first discovered during the British Antarctic expedition of 1910 to 1913. A mountain peak poking out of the ice, certainly less interesting than an ancient alien pyramid, so I don't think the rumors and speculations are going anywhere, especially because there's lots of other strange stuff said to go on in Antarctica. But here's something really unsettling about the region. All the dangerous stuff frozen in the ice that could cause problems if it were to thaw out. Scientists have dug up ancient ice cores and found bacteria that have been frozen solid. These bacteria can go into kind of a deep freeze mode where they don't really do anything but sit, waiting for better conditions. When the ice thaws, these bacteria can sometimes wake up, if you will, and start growing again though. In 2007, scientists in Antarctica found microorganisms trapped in ice that had been frozen for up to 8 million years. The tiny life forms were stuck in the ice, basically in a deep freeze, and when they were brought back to the warm lab, they began coming back to life and started to grow again. Scientists have also found old viruses frozen in layers of ice and permafrost. These viruses could be tens of thousands of years old, preserved in a state of suspended animation. Again though, they can potentially come back to life if the ice melts. When researchers thaw out samples from the ice, they can sometimes get these ancient viruses to reactivate. Seems like a bad idea, but understanding these viruses helps scientists learn more about how life and pathogens have evolved over time. Of course though, there's a lot of risk involved, and these viruses being released in an uncontrolled way could be very, very bad. Kimberly Miner, a climate scientist at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, say that 5 times fast, well, she had this to say: "There's a lot going on with the permafrost that is of concern, and it really shows why it's super important that we keep as much of the permafrost frozen as possible." No kidding. Alright, so in 2019, a team of researchers made a pretty mind-blowing discovery in the Scotia Sea, just north of Antarctica. They were part of the International Ocean Discovery Program, and while they were drilling into the seafloor, they ended up finding ancient DNA buried about 584 feet under the ocean floor. The researchers were able to figure out that this DNA was about 1 million years old, making it the oldest DNA ever discovered in seafloor sediments. Before this, the oldest DNA found in the sediments was only about 650,000 years old, so yeah, they shattered that record. You might think it's crazy that DNA could survive for so long, especially sitting at the bottom of the ocean, but Antarctica's cold temperatures helped preserve it. Plus, the deep sea doesn't get much sunlight, so the DNA wasn't damaged by harmful UV radiation like it would be if it were exposed on land. The big mystery, though, is what species this DNA came from. The researchers aren't entirely sure yet, but they know it's not from a virus or a bacteria. So this discovery opens up all sorts of cool possibilities. What kind of life was living in Antarctica a million years ago, and what else could be hidden deep beneath the ice and ocean? Only time and more research will tell.
2017, Antarctica saw a dramatic event when a massive hole, roughly the size of Ireland, appeared in its ice. Known as a polynia, this hole, which stretches across 78,000 square kilometers, is the largest of its kind observed since the 1970s and the first to form in 40 years. Located in the Weddell Sea of the Southern Ocean, this giant opening was created by warmer, saltier water from deeper ocean layers rising up and melting the ice above. As this warm water encounters the colder surface water, it cools and sinks only to be reheated and pushed back to the surface in a continuous cycle. While scientists are still puzzling over the exact reasons behind the formation of these giant holes, some suggest they might be used by marine mammals for breathing. Researchers are actively studying these intriguing holes to better understand their formation and impact on the Antarctic environment. In Antarctica's fossil-rich regions, scientists have uncovered remarkably well-preserved remains of ancient forests that date back around 120 million years. These forests thrived when Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, a far cry from the icy desert it is today. Some imaginative theories suggest these fossilized forests might be remnants of an ancient lost civilization. While these ideas definitely capture the imagination, the current scientific consensus is that these fossils are valuable clues about Antarctica's warmer, greener past when it was home to lush vegetation and diverse ecosystems. Beneath the thick ice sheets of Antarctica lies a hidden marvel, the Gamburtsev Mountains. Stretching over 1,200 kilometers and rising up to 3,000 meters, about a third of the height of Mount Everest, these mountains remain largely concealed under a 2,000 to 4,000 kilometer thick ice layer. Discovered in 1958 by Russian scientists who noticed unusual gravity fluctuations while traveling across Antarctica, these mountains are named after Soviet geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev. Despite never having directly observed these mountains, scientists use radar, gravity, and magnetic readings to study them and uncover their secrets. The Gamburtsevs have long puzzled researchers due to their age, estimated at around 1 billion years, as they should have eroded away over such a long period of time. One prevailing theory suggests that a frozen mantle may be shielding these ancient peaks from the relentless forces of erosion, preserving their grandeur beneath the ice. Antarctica is of course known for its harsh and freezing conditions, and because of this, it is home to some remarkable microorganisms, including a unique species of fungi that thrives in this icy environment. Unlike the fungi you might find in warm, forested areas, these Antarctic Antarctic fungi have adapted to survive the extreme cold by feeding on the old wooden huts left behind by early explorers. Another intriguing type of fungi in Antarctica has been discovered living off of the petroleum leaks from abandoned fuel containers. This type of fungi is particularly interesting because scientists are exploring its potential for cleaning up larger oil spills around the world. By studying these resilient fungi, researchers hope to harness their capabilities for environmental cleanup and gain insights into how life can adapt to the most extreme conditions on Earth. You might have heard whispers online about mysterious pyramids hidden beneath Antarctica's icy surface. Some theories suggest that these could be ancient structures built by aliens, lost civilizations, or even long-lost explorers. However, before you start picturing an Antarctic version of Egypt's Great Pyramid of Giza, let's set the record straight. There is no evidence supporting the existence of man-made pyramids in Antarctica. What some interpret as pyramids are actually natural mountain formations. In 2016, satellite images highlighted a particularly striking peak in the Ellsworth Mountains, which sparked headlines and speculation, but experts confirm that these so-called pyramids are simply just impressive examples of glacial horns, shaped by natural geological processes over a millennia. While the name pyramid does appear in several official Antarctic mountain names, these are just descriptive of their shapes and not evidence of hidden ancient architecture. In early 2017, a satellite image of Antarctica sparked a flurry of excitement and speculation online when it appeared to show what some claimed was a giant staircase. Posted on a conspiracy theory forum where all the craziest information is, the image led to wild theories suggesting it could be an alien landing site. While some jumped to extraterrestrial conclusions, others proposed more plausible explanations, such as a glitch in the camera or snow formations. Despite the buzz, skeptics pointed out that the image lacked specific coordinates and could be a natural anomaly like snow dunes or ridges. Researchers and experts generally attribute such formations to natural processes rather than mysterious or alien origins, but the image certainly added another intriguing layer to the many conspiracy theories surrounding Antarctica. For this one, instead of just taking a look at this strange structure, we are climbing it. Well, not we, but someone did. In January 2013, a team of climbers and filmmakers, including Leo Holding, Sean Leary, Jason Pickles, Chris Rabone, and Alistair Lee, tackled a new route up the northeast ridge of Ulvitana in Antarctica's Fenriskjeften Range. This 35-pitch route, stretching 1,750 meters, was the fourth ascent of Ulvitana, the highest peak in the range, known for its striking spire-like shape. Arriving on December 22nd, the team set up a festive base camp before spending 10 challenging days scaling the ridge through difficult 5.12 A2 terrain. Despite extreme cold, with temperatures dropping to -35 degrees Celsius and even a severe snowstorm, they reached the summit on January 24th. Although they had initially planned to base jump from the peak, dangerous weather conditions led them to descend via traditional methods. The team's adventure, marked by intense climbing and harsh conditions, was captured in a film and celebrated as a major achievement in Antarctic climbing. The Hollow Earth theory is like something straight out of a sci-fi adventure, suggesting that beneath Antarctica's icy crust lies a gateway to a colossal, hollow world. Imagine a hidden realm, complete with its own advanced civilization, ecosystems, and maybe even mystical creatures, all tucked away in Earth's hollow core. Although this theory captures the imagination and has inspired countless stories in speculative fiction, it doesn't necessarily hold up under scientific scrutiny. Geologists and researchers firmly argue that our planet is solid with a layered structure, not a giant empty sphere. But I've never been, So maybe one day. I don't know. I'm not going to the center of the earth. I'm not Josh Hutcherson. Despite its freezing temperatures, Antarctica is home to several volcanoes, including 4 on Ross Island. While most of these volcanoes are dormant, Mount Erebus stands out as the world's southernmost active volcano and Antarctica's second highest peak, reaching 3,800 meters. Over the past 30 years, Mount Erebus has shown increased volcanic activity, featuring a remarkable landscape of liquid magma and ancient lava lakes that have been boiling for about 1.3 million years. Due to its remote location and harsh weather, access to Mount Erebus is definitely limited, but a team of scientists managed to climb it in 2013. They braved snow, rocks, and glaciers to reach the summit, where they discovered life thriving in the volcano's heat, including microorganisms living in ice caves and soil. These extreme conditions make these organisms some of the most unique and resilient in the entire world. Beneath Antarctica's thick ice sheet lies Lake Vostok, an enormous subglacial lake that remains hidden from view and has intrigued scientists for years. This vast lake, which is roughly the size of Lake Ontario, sits under miles of ice and is home to unique microbial life that thrives in extreme conditions. Because Lake Vostok has been isolated from the rest of the world for millions of years, its environment has led to some fascinating theories. Scientists speculate that the lake could harbor hidden ecosystems or even unknown forms of life adapted to its extreme conditions. The discovery of these extremophiles, microorganisms that survive in such harsh environments, fuels excitement and curiosity, hinting at the possibility of life forms that could exist in other extreme environments, possibly even ones beyond our own planet.
Kicking off the list at number 10, sea pigs. This list gets creepy and or crawly, but first we gotta ease into the Arctic Ocean. We gotta start off this haunting list with the sea pig. Look at this little guy, okay, the pug of the ocean. He looks like a stress ball with feelings. What's going on with him? They look like something that would be microscopic, but really they're 6 inches long, wide, round, big, I don't know, they're pretty large. They stick together, and I mean that in a literal sense. Sea pigs will travel in large gatherings. They live in the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean, so they're hard to find, really. Their mating routine is also still a mystery. We have no idea how they do it. And just by looking at them, we're like, no guesses, certainly no guesses from me. All we know is that they travel in groups, so I don't know. Sounds like it's a good time, at least. Lifespan and mating life, total mystery. All we know is that they eat decaying matter on the ocean floor. Kudos to the crew over at Mbari. The footage they find of these deep sea creatures is always fascinating. It's always so otherworldly over at Mbari. Are you guys hiring? I'm afraid of the ocean, but you know, I'll do some behind the scenes stuff, who knows. I'll just edit the weird fish. I'll put the text in. Like, what the f is this? Ooh. Number 9, rock bottom. A little over a year ago, scientists camped out in the middle of the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf for nearly 3 months. Why? All in the name of science. Yeah, we're getting cold. Geologist James Smith from the British Antarctic Survey slept in a tent. Who does this? Why do you choose to do this? James Smith, apparently. Here we go. He flew 5 hours out to this ice shelf. Him and his team had to melt 20 tons of snow in order to pour hot water through this ice shelf for 30 hours straight. When the team lowered their gear down through this 3,000 feet of ice, they couldn't get a sample of sediment from the ocean floor because they hit a boulder. I mean, the odds here alone, I mean, the entire seafloor is basically flat and they end up hitting this thing. At first they were frustrated, but this boulder that is 160 miles away from daylight is home to microbial malts, these alien-like sponges. These cylindrical sponges, possibly hydroids. I love seeing scientists get jazzed about stuff. They're like, oh, this rock had absolutely no business being here. Like, guy, you just melted through ice for 20 hours in the middle of Antarctica. I feel like it's the other way around. Imagine if those sea sponges could talk. They're like, oh, of all the spots, really? Please close that. The first shred of light, and it's just a big GoPro coming at them. They're like, what is that? Number 8, emperor penguins. They're as glorious as their name hints towards. I remember watching Happy Feet a lot growing up. I was really into penguins and tap dancing for a hot minute there. That movie changed the game. The main penguins here, they're all emperor penguins. Robin Williams' character, Lovelace, he's a rock hopper penguin with the cool, you know, the fluffy eyebrows. The other guys are all emperor penguins. The colorful orange necks, the OG characters, they're all beautiful. They're the largest penguins on the planet, and their breeding habits set them aside from the rest. Once the female lays an egg, I'm not gonna do sound effects for this whole process. I don't know why I did that. That's so stupid. Once the female lays an egg, she'll leave it with her mate for an incubation period, but she'll walk over 50 miles to the ocean just to get food. The mate has to fast for around 100 days just waiting for his next meal. Once in the water, these emperor penguins really go for it. They soar. They can dive up to 2,000 feet, which is far deeper than any bird in the animal kingdom. And they can hold their breath for around 20 minutes, which is incredible. Longest I've gotten is 3 minutes, but I'm coming for you, Mumbles. Number 7, chinstrap penguins. Okay, from happy feet to slappy feet. Chinstrap penguins are the most aggressive of the penguin family. They're crazy. These guys are nuts. They're tiny. They have to be aggressive. I mean, look at them. They only grow up to 30 inches in length. They're so tiny, but again, they're so aggressive. They only grow up to 30 inches in length, so they have to be, you know? These ones don't tap dance. They actually crump battle you. Yeah, they embarrass you in front of you and your kin. Chin straps are small and quick because their diet requires them to be. With krill waiting 50 miles offshore, chinstrap penguins have quite the commute. Their thick skin is also quite literal. Their blubber keeps them warm during these long commutes. As long as no leopard seals show up, their commute is pretty smooth sailing. Number 6, the sea spider. Okay, we had a few ha-has with the penguins. Now it's time to get weird. Now we know why we're here. The sea spider, thankfully, is not an actual spider. It just looks like one, kind of like daddy long legs. This is a daddy cold legs. It's a marine arthropod, and the reason it's so haunting to look at is because of polar gigantism. Many species have this. Their climate being so harsh, lack of nutrients, lack of sunlight, friends, family, etc. Scientists believe it's because sea spiders have slowed down their metabolism, so much so they require a small amount of oxygen to survive. So over time, the oxygen around these sea spiders turn them into like Captain America. They just juice them up. They take on way more than they're adapted to. And in turn, we get giant, terrifying sea bugs. Nice. Number 5, scale worms. Upon first glance, again, scale worms look microscopic. They look like tiny bacteria that are covered in scales. Hairy, weird, gross scales. They're pretty horrifying to look at. These guys are actually 8 inches long on average, so they're not tiny at all. This is what they really look like. The Antarctic scale worm is covered with elytra, these natural bristles, but the most distracting feature here has to be its mouth thing, yeah. This part on its mouth can literally fully retract. It can go inside out, yeah. It can suck its own mouth inside of its body, and then when it's time to eat, it pops out and then claws its prey to pieces. Horrible. I saw a video of it, I almost threw up. We went from happy feet to retractable mandibles. Cheers, that's how we do it here on MA. Number 4, glass sponges. Antarctic glass sponges. They don't get their name because they're translucent, they get their name because their skeletons contains silica, which is a literal component of glass. How neat is that? Back in 2013, a massive discovery took place. Scientists figured out how these glass sponges grow in size. Well, they figured out that they do grow in general. As our ice shelves slowly disappear, the numbers of glass sponge sightings, they increase. They don't hunt down prey at all, obviously. They spend their entire life quite still, just eating the leftovers that happen to drift along their merry way. Their food was so sparse as well, for a long time it was fully believed they couldn't possibly grow, because what would they possibly eat? The more we learn about glass sponges, the better, because these little guys tell us a lot about climate change. We're like, how is it happening? What's going on? Nothing's happening. They don't talk much. They're really quiet. They don't have mouths or eyes. Number 3, the springtail. Also known as the elephants of Antarctica, springtails are hexapods. They're exclusively land animals, whereas penguins, they sometimes, bop and swim. These guys are only on land. They're tiny as well. They measure up to about 1 millimeter on average. They look like earwigs almost. Ice earwigs that eat bacteria. Horrible. They got a big old butt too, so you're probably gonna notice if you see one walking by. They live on average 1 to 2 years, and they produce glycerol, which helps them, not freeze to death. That always helps. Antarctic springtails live longer than springtails in other parts of the world because the frigid temperatures, again, slows their metabolism down so much they can just survive off basically nothing. They're not immortal, but as far as ice insects go, they're close. They're pretty mighty. Small but mighty. Number 2, the Hoff crab. When these creatures get their names, it's often in relation to their appearance or their super ability. The immortal jellyfish ages in reverse. The glass octopus is otherwise see-through. The Hoff crab gets its name because it looks hairy, like David Hasselhoff. He's hairy as well. Yeah, David Hasselhoff just tweeted the Hoff crab with this photo. So random. Imagine following him and you see this, you're like, what's going on? Why? We love it. The scientific name later given was Kiwa tyleri, appropriately named after its discoverer, Paul Tyler from Southampton University. Found in the East Scotia Ridge on the Southern Ocean, where the water is too cold for the Hoff crab, these guys are just covered in bacteria, hence their hairy Hoff look. Because it spends so much time staying warm near hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor. The guy literally just sits around a deep sea campfire just collecting ice cold bacteria. What a wild life. He's a deep sea hairy caveman, essentially. When it comes time to eat, the Hoff crab just scrapes off a little bit of bacteria from any part and then just gives himself more food. He gives himself a little haircut salad. We love those. And finally, coming in number 1, the colossal squid. Not to be confused with the giant squid, those are similar but smaller. Still terrifying, but more petite. As its name gives away, the colossal squid is much larger. They live in the darkest, coldest depths surrounding the waters of Antarctica, and these squids, on average, they're around 46 feet in length, with the females being the largest of the species. The biggest and baddest, of course. They have large tentacles with suckers equipped with razor hooks, so whatever it does grab, it's certainly not letting go anytime soon. Its diet consists of large fish, and when I say large, I'm referring to, 7-foot long Patagonian toothfish, not a goldfish. They're colossal, and they try and fight whales sometimes. They're crazy. They have no regard for the size of others. They're gonna fight anything and everyone. They're more often than not marked up, suggesting they've been in a few deep sea tussles. On top of being magnificent, they're quite mysterious. Only 2 specimens have ever been collected, with the second being recent in 2014. Some believe this is the closest living relative to the kraken. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Sound off below. Either way, I'm gonna go throw up. I never want to see any of these in real life. Awesome.
And we're kicking off this list with pyramids. So a couple years back, satellite images revealed a mysterious triangular formation in Antarctica's desolate landscape. When the images hit social media, debates and speculations about the origin of this quote-unquote pyramid began. The pyramid shape appeared in satellite images of the Ellsworth mountain range located in the southern reaches of Antarctica. It seemed to have a striking resemblance to the dimensions of Egypt's iconic Great Pyramid of Giza, measuring 2 kilometers in each direction from its square base. And as these images circulated on social media platforms, the conspiracy theories began to flow. Now, scientists attribute these formations to natural processes and optical illusions, but perhaps there's a deeper secret being hidden from us in the cold, inhospitable terrain of Antarctica. Was there some ancient civilization that used to call the South Pole home? Did a group of beings from somewhere beyond our planet construct it? I don't know, I'm just here to ask the important questions. And now I'm here to tell you that if you are liking our channel so far, if you're new here, why not hit that subscribe button? We have awesome videos coming at you on the daily, plenty to see. Don't miss out. Do that right now. Next up, we have the ANITA discovery. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA, is a sophisticated scientific tool in the form of a high-tech balloon operated by NASA, floating above Antarctica. Its mission is to track subatomic particles generated by the interactions of high-energy neutrinos entering Earth's atmosphere from the depths of space. But a few years ago, ANITA made a strange discovery. It detected neutrinos seemingly originating from beneath the Earth's surface. Quite the departure from its intended function of capturing spaceborne neutrinos. One of the more fun hypotheses behind this is that these detected particles may be signs of a possible parallel universe where the fundamental laws of our own universe might operate in complete reverse. Now, this is really just speculative, but it's a pretty fascinating idea. Scientists were pretty perplexed by these findings, and as of right now, there still isn't a definitive explanation. At number 8, we have the Ross Island haunting. Ross Island is not only home to the McMurdo Station, a hub for scientific research, it also harbors something much darker. It's rumored to be haunted. There was a tragic plane crash on the island in 1979, and this crash claimed the lives of 257 people. Over the years, visitors to Ross Island have reported unsettling occurrences describing ghostly footsteps echoing in the icy darkness and mysterious voices that seem to emanate from nowhere. Some claim to have come face to face with full-on apparitions, believing to be the restless spirits of the plane crash victims, wandering the frigid snow-covered landscape for eternity. The haunting stories surrounding Ross Island have continued to be passed down through generations of Antarctic explorers and researchers. Number 7, the UFO crash landing. In 2018, an ex-Navy SEAL who had worked in the South Pole revealed some intriguing information to an investigative journalist named Linda Moulton Howe about an alien structure he once visited. He wished to remain anonymous as this information was highly classified. In August of 2003, this individual and his team had been tasked with a highly classified objective under the guise of a research reconnaissance mission. They arrived at their destination where they found a large dark structure protruding from the ice. There were doors on it, these big square slabs cut into the structure that when you push on kind of receded into the building, opening up into this long hallway. The inside of the structure was lit green by an unknown source, and adorning the walls were strange hieroglyphics. But they didn't resemble any hieroglyphics seen here on Earth. This is a pretty outlandish story. Impossible to prove, but hard to discredit completely because it's just hearsay, really, but it is fascinating. Plus, Antarctica is one of the most unpopulated places on Earth. It would be a good spot for little green men from space to operate without the presence of prying eyes. So let's stay on the topic of UFOs for a minute and discuss another possible UFO crash landing in Antarctica, this time spotted with satellite images. YouTube channel Secure Team 10 shared a video back in 2018 zooming close in on a small island just off the coast of Antarctica, which seemed to show a long, sharp mark in the snow as if something had crashed and then skidded along. Now, this island has the exact same environment as Antarctica. It seems to be a piece of it that broke off and floated away. So it's inhospitable, totally void of people. So what is this object? The narrator describes it as cigar-shaped, covered by mounds of snow. Whatever the object is, it's also very large, and the trail it left behind is almost 1,000 meters long. The trail behind this mysterious object leads to a mountain, and there's debris that seems to have been pushed out at the base. It looks like as if the object flew down and crashed into the mountain before skidding along the ice where it now sits. Part of me thinks there could have been an avalanche or something on the mountain, and maybe this is just a piece of rock that slid out extra far. I don't know. What do you all think, though? At number 5, we have Scott's Hut. Back to the haunted realm now. In 1911, 25 men led by Sir Robert Scott departed from this hut in Cape Evans on an expedition to the South Pole, an expedition they would never return from. The hut now stands just as it did all those years ago. There are belongings laying around, scientific equipment, even the frozen penguins the group had been studying remain on the outside of the hut. It's almost completely frozen in time. And as intriguing as it would be to give this place a visit, staff and visitors do claim to have an odd feeling when stepping inside it. There's a sadness about the place, an emptiness, a place that was so full of life, with daring explorers about to begin an epic journey, never to come back. Only maybe they did come back. It's no surprise that with an eerie history like that, some folks believe the hut to be haunted. Ghostly whispers, shadowy figures, a sense of not being alone. These are just some of the things guests have reported during their visits. Number 4, the giant hole. In 2017, researchers in Antarctica observed a massive polynya, a large area of open water within the sea ice, suddenly appearing. It was already massive, but things got even crazier when the polynya expanded at an unprecedented rate, increasing in size by more than 8 times within just a few weeks. The discovery was made in Weddell Sea, an area known for its harsh freezing conditions. Polynyas are not uncommon in Antarctica, but their sudden and substantial growth is a more rare occurrence. That puzzled the researchers. These gaps in the ice are usually maintained by complex processes, ocean currents, temperature variations, but the rapid expansion of this particular one challenged existing scientific understanding. Researchers and climate experts were left with a series of questions. What was causing this rapid expansion? Was it related to climate change, natural variability, or some other unknown factor, and the scientific community set out to study this event with the use of satellite imagery, ocean sensors, and computer models. But the prevailing theory is that the Polenia was caused by intense cyclones. Alright, next let's talk about all the military presence in Antarctica. What's going on there? Let's start by going all the way back to World War II. There have been rumors for decades that Mr. H himself, the dictator of Germany, might have established a covert base in Antarctica. As for what they were doing there are lots of rumors, but the SS were super into mysticism and the occult, always in pursuit of ancient artifacts that they believed had powers that could aid in their conquest. Pretty wild, but maybe they were after something hidden somewhere in the frozen tundra. After the war in 1946 and 47, the US sent a huge fleet to Antarctica, and many believe that they had been tasked with destroying this secret German base. As for more contemporary military activities, who knows what's going on? Just imagine vast hidden research facilities buried beneath the ice, or cutting-edge technology being tested in the harshest conditions imaginable. Conspiracies suggest everything from advanced weaponry to secretive scientific experiments related to climate change or extraterrestrial phenomena. Who knows? And number 2 is Deception Island. Deception Island, nestled in the icy expanse of Antarctica, holds a chilling history that goes beyond its freezing temperatures. Once a bustling whalers station, remnants of this grim past still linger in the form of whale bones strewn across some of its beaches, a reminder of an industry that relentlessly hunted these beautiful creatures. When the Great Depression hit and oil prices plummeted, the whalers station was abandoned, only to be repurposed later as a British World War II base. Now today, visitors to Whalers Bay, a landing site on this island, have shared tales of their experiences. Some have reported witnessing eerie apparitions, strange orbs of light. Some have even claimed to hear disembodied voices echoing across the ice. In 2009, when the crew of the American TV show Destination Truth ventured to the bay, they captured unexplained bangs and the unsettling sight of a shadowy figure roaming among the decaying ruins. The crew even captured a thermal signature in a window and an SOS signal emanating from one of the abandoned shacks. But finally, we have the theory that Atlantis could have been located deep beneath the ice of Antarctica. According to Plato, Atlantis was this advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished overnight. Now, when we think of Atlantis, we usually picture it in the sunny Mediterranean, not, buried under all that ice down south. But here's the twist. Antarctica wasn't always an icy wasteland. Millions of years ago, it had forests and a much milder climate. So some folks propose that Atlantis could have existed in Antarctica before it froze over, or some other ancient civilization. They point to satellite images showing peculiar shapes under the ice, speculating that these could be remnants of the lost city. We already talked about a pyramid earlier. That could have something to do with it. Scientists, though, of course, remain skeptical. They've been studying Antarctica for years, haven't found any concrete evidence to support this idea, but it's fun to think about. Could that pyramid shape, again, possibly play into this? Who knows?
Starting us off at number 10, we have Deception Island. In 1906, a Norwegian-Chilean whaling company started using Whalers Bay as a base for their factory ship. Other operations followed closely behind them, and then the next thing you know, a boomtown was born. But then, by just 1931, after a sweeping decline in the market for whale oil due to the Great Depression, the island was abandoned. Since then, it has quite literally become a ghost town, with visitors reporting seeing strange orbs of light coming from the abandoned huts, seeing apparitions of people walking around, and even hearing disembodied voices. So while the South Pole remains a harsh land with no official permanent population, it seems that ghosts who are unaffected by what makes the South Pole so difficult to endure have settled in and haunt all those who try to enter their domain. Next up at number 9, Wordie hut. Although it's named after James Wordie, who was the chief scientist for Sir Edmund Shackleton's endurance expedition in 1914, the Wordie hut was built much later in 1947. For years it had been rumored to be haunted by terrifying spirits, and after several reports, a group of paranormal researchers from Destination Truth decided to see for themselves and spend a night in the hut. When they arrived, they were immediately taken back by the energy of the cabin. They knew that something was there. That night, members of the team heard frantic flipping of light switches and slamming doors from rooms where no one was staying. Jars began falling off the shelves all on their own, and after their one-night stay, they left completely creeped out. Now, I always think a telling tale of if some place is truly scary is when paranormal investigators, people whose job is literally to investigate creepy stuff, get scared and don't want to come back. Well, even so, visitors have checked it out since, but all reported similar events that chilled them to the bone and have never returned. Next up at number 8, the ghost ship of Jenny. Thought to have been abandoned in port in 1823, this ship was thought to be lost forever. That was until a whaling ship made a horrifying discovery a few years later, back in 1840. As the legend goes, Jenny had gotten stuck in the ice while on its expedition, and no one knew where it had ended up or what had happened to the crew aboard. That was until the whaling ship discovered them, and believing it to be the legendary Jenny, decided to go on board to check out what might still be on it. When they made their way onto the ship, they were horrified to find all the bodies frozen solid and perfectly preserved by the ice. Allegedly, the crew found a note they believed to be written by the captain that read, "May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive." While some believe it's just folklore, others swear by the tale, claiming all the sailors of Jenny haunt the boat to this day. Coming in at number 7, Mountains of Madness. While Antarctica may be one of the most haunted places in the world, it is also home to some breathtaking scenery. But the Mountains of Madness kind of fall into the first category. Officially called the Gamburtsev mountain range, they are roughly the size of the Alps, but there is one catch. No one has ever seen them. But how could that be, I am sure you are wondering? Well, back in the 1950s, a group of Russian explorers discovered there were strange gravity fluctuations coming from below the ice. After a bit of sleuthing, they discovered the fluctuations to be from an entire subglacial mountain range hidden below 3 miles of ice. First of all, the fact that there is 3-mile deep ice is enough of a reason for me to never want to go there, but I digress. Scientists have compared it to studying another planet, which to some might be exciting, but to others they feel it's terrifying. No one knows what kind of life could be under there, what could have been preserved there for the last 250 million years. And some have even said they felt a strange presence when they are near. Coming in at number 6, Shackleton's hut. Antarctica is mainly a destination visited by scientists and explorers, but considering many of the early explorers died while on these trips, it also makes a lot of sense as to why they are all haunted. And one man who claimed to be a non-believer of ghosts would return from his trip thinking much differently. His name was Sir Edmund Hillary, and he was a New Zealand mountaineer and explorer who in 1953, along with his Sherpa, was the first known person to reach the summit of Mount Everest. So after conquering the mountain, he was looking for another adventure and sought out the South Pole 5 years later. When he arrived, he stayed in Sir Ernest Shackleton's abandoned hut from his famous endurance expedition. And when he was there, he claims to have seen Shackleton's ghost walk towards him and welcome him to the hut before vanishing right in front of his eyes. Ever since, it's been known as a paranormal hotspot, and many who visit leave terrified by what they see. Next Next up at number 5, Scott's Hut. During the early 1900s, there was a huge race to be the first country to reach the South Pole. Then in 1911, explorer Robert Falcon Scott and his team set out on a mission against Norway, later called the Terra Nova Expedition, to do just that. While many explorers, Scott included, had explored Antarctica, none had managed to reach the pole, and so the race was on. A hut was pre-constructed in Britain that was brought over as a base camp for the crew, and they set up near the Great Ice Barrier. Eventually, it was decided some of the men would stay behind with supplies and shelter, and the rest of the team would venture out further. But sadly, their mission was ultimately a bust, as by the time they reached the pole, the Norwegian flag had already been planted. So the men turned around to head back, but sadly due to frostbite, starvation, and disease, the men died off one by one and never made their return. Those that have visited the hut today claim to hear strange voices and footsteps all around the cabin. Apparently, the minute you walk in, you feel as though you're being watched, and some even swear they've seen the ghosts of Scott and his men lurk inside. Next up at number 4, Ross Island. Home to one of the most recognized research stations across the continent, it's also the site of a devastating plane crash that left the island drowning in lost spirits. Back in 1977, New Zealand began operating sightseeing trips via plane over Antarctica, but in 1979, a true disaster would strike. Though exactly what happened is unknown, somehow the computer directing the flight got rerouted, and instead of taking its usual trip, it ended up flying dangerously close to a nearby mountain. All of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, the plane crashed, instantly killing all 257 passengers and crew members on board. Today, those that visit the island claim to hear unsettling voices in the darkness, as well as strange ghostly footsteps. Some say they have even seen what they believe to be the flight victims wandering around the frigid landscape, eerily moaning and crying at night. So while there may be some beautiful places to visit, you might want to steer clear of this haunted island altogether. Coming in at number 3, a Soviet military base. Back in 2009, scientists passing through the icy scape came across a strange and concerning discovery. While exploring what's called the Pole of Inaccessibility, which is the point furthest from the sea in Antarctica, the group found a random monument with a bust of Vladimir Lenin perched on top. Now, if you don't know who that is or why that's a little bit creepy, let me explain. Vladimir Lenin was the founder of the Soviet Union and first head of government under the new regime. It was under his ruling that Russia became a one-party communist state. So upon discovering his lone bust in the middle of nowhere, the scientists decided it might be a good idea to keep exploring. After some digging, they happened upon an old Soviet military base that was covered by mountains of snow, and they realized that the bust was facing the direction of Moscow. Now, no one knows how long the bust has been there, and even creepier, no one knows why it's there, but many suspect that it might be the place where Lenin was buried back in 1924, and it's thought that his ghost may still haunt the area to this day. Coming in at number 2, Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the southernmost volcano on Earth, and it's still very much active. Some like to refer to it as the place where fire meets ice, as while inside the mountain it's swirling with molten hot magma, the outside remains frozen solid and is surrounded by ice caves. And while that might sound super cool, it is also the site of the infamous Ross Island plane crash that I already spoke about, and so it's littered with ghosts seeking revenge for having their lives taken too soon. And while many of the spirits are known to roam around the entire island, frightening visitors at every chance, some of the spirits are stuck in the place that took their lives. Some say that if you walk past the mountain, you can still hear the screams of the victims who lost their lives to the crash. And last up in our number 1 spot, we have the Drake Passage. The Drake Passage may just be the most well-known part of all of Antarctica, but probably not for a good reason. Widely considered the most powerful convergence of seas, the Drake Passage is the point where the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean converge with the southern seas, and it is notorious for its treacherous waters. It's a great feat for anyone to even dare to cross it, and it's estimated over the years that more than 1,000 people have died attempting to pass through its terrifying and turbulent waves. Many believe that all who have lost their lives to the passage remain, haunting the waters to warn those that attempt the feat to turn back. Or maybe they're trying to bring you into their realm with them. Either way, it's best to stay far, far, far away, because even if the ghosts don't get you, the waves almost certainly will.
Starting off this countdown, we have the pests. One very important thing to know about Antarctica is that its ecosystem is pretty fragile. This is due to climate change, loss of biodiversity, human impacts, and the accidental introduction of non-native or alien species. Somehow, we as humans have introduced 121 types of fungi, 72 invertebrates, 8 mammals, and 3 bird species. Now, there are even worms in Antarctica. This is why Antarctica has a don't pack a pest rule. This means that before coming to Antarctica, everything you bring must be thoroughly washed, decontaminated, and inspected. This is to make sure you don't got any tiny seeds on ya. They'll even hoover you just to make sure. It's pretty intense, but it's done in order to protect Antarctica. Moving on to number 9, we have no souvenirs. So you took a trip to Antarctica and you want to take something as a memento to remember your trip by. Too bad, you're not allowed to. Taking anything home from Antarctica is banned. That includes a small pebble from a beach or a small bird feather. You can't take any kind of biological material home. Now the reasoning behind this is that there are around 10,000 scientists operating there. They don't want you accidentally taking a fossil home with you or something. You also can't take any equipment you find randomly, even if it's unattended, because chances are it's research equipment and that would be stealing. There's no finders keepers rule in Antarctica, sorry. Moving on to number 8, we have the lichen. Believe it or not, but plants do grow in Antarctica. When people think of this continent, they think of it as a cold, barren place, which is fair, but several types of grass, moss, and lichen grow there. One rule that Antarctica has is that you are prohibited from walking on the lichen. Now, it's because that it takes such a long time to grow, and if it gets damaged, it'll take an even longer time to repair itself. And it may not look like much, but it's vital to Antarctica's ecosystem. In our 7th spot, we have the rescue. Now Antarctica is pretty freaking big. It's twice the size of Australia, and it has the lowest recorded temperature on Earth. Not only that, but there's not a lot of people living there, which is why, if you're in danger, don't expect to be rescued. It sounds depressing, but it's just realistic. And with Antarctica's unpredictable weather conditions, rescues are basically impossible. Tour groups literally will tell you not to stray away. If anything happens to you, you're kind of SOL. This place might be beautiful, but it's harsh and full of unseen dangers. In our 6th spot, we have the no guns law. Antarctica is a demilitarized zone, meaning absolutely no military activity can take place there. This means that there cannot be any military bases or structures of any kind, and absolutely no weapons testing. With that comes the no weapons law. No firearms or explosive devices are allowed there unless you have been given direct permission. Now, officials in Antarctica do have a firearm, but it's locked away in a glass cabinet in the station master's office. It's a 12-gauge shotgun, and it's only used in emergency situations. According to a local, the only time the station master used this gun was when a man was chasing another man around town with a butcher knife, shouting something about aliens. The next day, the station master was seen escorting this man, who was placed in a straitjacket, onto a plane to get him out of there. He had his gun with him as protection. Other than him, you're not allowed to have any firearms in your possession. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the dolphins. Dolphins are cute, right? Maybe you want to go out whale and dolphin watching and you just want to get close to them. Well, don't. There is a rule in Antarctica that states you must leave the dolphins alone.
This includes sailing a boat directly into a group of dolphins to try and get them to bow ride with you. Now, they have been known to do this on their own, but it's forbidden to harass these mammals in an attempt to get them to do it. Not only that, but Antarctica is home to hourglass dolphins. These types of dolphins are very rare and not yet threatened, so they want to keep it that way. In our fourth spot today, we have the wisdom teeth removal. Turns out that you gotta get your wisdom teeth removed before going to Antarctica. This is mainly important for people wanting to stay there for a while or those that are going to work there. If you're doing a quick visit, then you don't really gotta worry about this. Now, having your wisdom teeth removed lessens the risk of having a medical emergency since medical aid is very limited there. But not everyone needs to have them removed. You have to undergo rigorous medical and dental exams before going to Antarctica. So if it's found that your wisdom teeth won't be a problem, then you don't have to have them removed. In our third spot, we have the nuclear weapons. Antarctica is a nuclear-free zone, just in case you were thinking about bringing a nuclear bomb or something with you, you can't, I'm sorry. On top of that, it cannot be used for testing nuclear weapons. A treaty was made when test explosions were being carried out in the South Pacific. They were scared that Antarctica, being largely deserted, was going to be an area where people also wanted to conduct nuclear testing. But this treaty prohibits them from doing so. You're also not allowed to use Antarctica for the disposal of nuclear waste. Moving on to number 2, we have the appendix removal. If you're going to Antarctica for an extended period of time to visit, live, or work there, there's just one tiny little thing you have to cough up. Your appendix. Yeah, you heard me. Anyone there for a long time has to get their appendix removed. Now, this is because the nearest major hospital is 1,000 kilometers away or 625 miles. And there are only a few doctors on base and none are specialist surgeons. So if something goes wrong with your appendix, they won't be able to help you. Now, there are also doctors available in the research bases. Again, none of them are surgeons who can operate on appendixes. Also, let's say something severe does happen. Medical evacuations take a lot of time and effort and end up putting everyone else at risk. So they make people get their appendix removed as a preventative measure. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the jurisdiction. Now, the jurisdiction of Antarctica is confusing. And that's because Antarctica doesn't belong to anyone. There's no single country that owns Antarctica. So when you visit, you're under the jurisdiction of your own country. Same with the researchers working there, regardless of which national station they may visit. So when there, you are subjected to the laws of your country. If you break any of the rules of the Antarctic Treaty, you face the laws on that when you return home. Same thing goes if you commit a crime there, you face punishment when you return home.